What's going on, everybody? I want to give you a little tip on a product you should have as a miniature painter, whether or not you have an airbrush, and that is Vallejo's Airbrush Flow Improver. Now, if you get an airbrush, I think this should be as important as the airbrush cleaner. If you go on YouTube, you can find a lot of home concoctions of mixtures of isopropyl alcohol and Windex and other things. But if you're going to thin your paints, you're going to want Airbrush Flow Improver. Now, this does what it says, improves flow. It decreases the surface tension. And this airbrush thinner is to thin non-airbrush paints into being used in the airbrush. Now, non-airbrush paints can't just be thinned down indefinitely because there's a certain size of the pigment particles in the paint, and although that will thin it down, it does not break down the pigment particles. So picture if you were in a crowded room and there was one doorway and everybody, say somebody yelled fire, and everybody ran for that one door. Now all these people, think of them as your pigment particles, and that one door as the airbrush nozzle. The larger the people, the pigment, the harder it is for all of them to go flying through that door at once, right? They'll jam up. That's what clogs the airbrush. Now, this is like lube. It is so good. You will not believe how much more you will enjoy airbrushing once you start using this. Now, you should take, I'm going to grab an airbrush. So this is one of my Chinese airbrushes. Currently, I'm using the Badger Extreme Patriot 105, and super happy with it again. I haven't been using it for a while, and I've just been using this Chinese one, but I believe this is a Zenny. And I'm really happy with this one too. I like it a lot, but I've been using the nicer one lately. So when you paint, say you should probably, if you want to build those quick, cool transitions on miniatures, you should be doing primer in a grayscale. So you should prime the whole model black, and then maybe a perpendicular or 45-degree angle, do gray, and then from above, white, and then maybe also with the white pick out where you want certain highlights to be. Now this is going to give you a zenithal prime. It's basically doing an underpainting in a grayscale or like a black and white underpainting. Now, the next step, which is so easy, and if you check out my eBay store or check out my Instagram, sleepwalkair_brush, there are a lot of examples where I use this, where I do the grayscale, and then all you do is you take this. I have no science on the amount you use, but you're going to put a squirt, not drops. You're going to put a nice squirt, a glug, right? You're going to fill your little cup, say, to maybe like here, right? It's going to be mostly that, mostly Flow Improver. Then you're going to take your nice red or blue or whatever, and you're going to put a few drops. Now this is literally a squirt, and then we go drops of paint. Now you're going to stir it up. You could backflow if your needle's not exposed, where you cover it, pull back the air a little bit. This feels like it's jammed. And that's going to give you basically a glaze. Now airbrushes basically are glazing anyway because they're shooting thin layers of paint. Now this is going to shoot even more consistently smooth thin layers of paint, and they're going to be more transparent. Now you're going to shoot your thin layer over the entire model. The parts that were primed in white will be, say, a brighter red because it'll be more pure this. The ones in gray, it will dull this down, and the shadows in black will, this over black will be a dark red. Now that gives you a quick pre-paint build-up. Now you already have a monster or a model. You do that on a bloodletter, he's 90% done. Or a corn demon or something. when you're painting monsters. Now, if you're painting, say, a guy in armor, pick maybe one aspect of him. Maybe it's his armor, maybe it's his clothes underneath. If he's got a robe, maybe do that. Still do the grayscale and then still just glaze over him with the airbrush. But that basically gives you a huge head start on whatever color you chose. Now, the next step is you're going to bring in a wash. Now, this could be dark tone. This one's really good. Dark tone. Could be Nolan Oil, Agrax Shade, Caribou Crimson, whatever. But the secret is you're going to put this in the wash too. So you're going to take your little water bottle cap. You're going to put now a couple drops of this and a couple drops of your wash. And that's going to make your wash just slide right off the flat surfaces and really settle in the recesses. And this, plus the zenithal and the pre-shade, or the zenithal prime pre-shading grayscale, then the glaze with the airbrush color, and then the wash. Now you have a really interesting color to work from. Say you were doing this all in reds, you will have a red highlight, a red mid-tone, a red shadow, and the shadows will be reinforced with the wash, and then the wash will also kind of black line details where pieces connect. It'll put a dark line because the wash will settle. Very, very nice. So the airbrush, once you do this Flow Improver glaze over the model, the wash is then going to make all those details pop, because the airbrush is basically going to hit everything, and that's why you're going to want that grayscale underneath to already start the shadows, and the wash is going to make those shadows pop. If you don't have an airbrush, you should still pick up the Flow Improver in the little bottle. It comes with a really, really nice pointy dropper applicator. And once again, just put a couple drops of this in with your wash, and your washes are immediately going to start doing what you always wish they did. When you think you're going to wash a miniature and you have problems with it, if you put a couple of drops of that Flow Improver in there, it's going to act more like what you were expecting, and that is darken the recesses and not alter or completely tint the flat surfaces. Now, GW's washes are high in pigment. They're kind of a wash and an ink, and they do tint, but with the Flow Improver, they will tint less. Whereas Army Painter doesn't tint quite as much, and with the Flow Improver, barely tints at all. And you can mix it with inks and make your own washes. You can mix it with acrylic paint to glaze with a paintbrush. Put a drop or two on your, say, wet palette as like a little thing to dip your brush in every once in a while. Mix with your paint. It's kind of a slow dry medium in a sense, because you're improving the flow. You'll notice, put a little drop of wash in your cap, and then put a drop of that Flow Improver on it, and the wash bubble will just level out. It's like a leveling agent. It's so nice. One caution though, because it's so slippery, because this is airbrush lube, if your PSI is high on your airbrush and you take your model, you're going to want to be able to lower your PSI, and that's why I've been switching more to the Extreme Patriot 105, because it has a little choke nozzle that I can basically lower the PSI without changing my compressor. But when you spray with the Flow Improver, if you spray close, because the paint is basically lubed up, the paint will hit the surface, and then the air from behind it, basically, right? So the airbrush is aiming here, the paint hits, and then the next, the air immediately after will spider it or spread it. That's only if your PSI is too high or you're too close with your airbrush. So that's one thing to be concerned about. You don't want to hit the model and then spread the color with the air pressure behind, whatever you're spraying. Hopefully this was helpful to you. Please subscribe. Hopefully you pick up some Airbrush Flow Improver from your friendly local game store this weekend. Support the hobby. Also, just definitely buy stuff from your game store, because could you imagine if you were into, I don't know, basically every industry that's been crushed by the internet and you had no place to go enjoy your things. Yeah, so buy your Flow Improver from your game store, unless they don't have it. Buy it on eBay. I'll put a link below. Please subscribe. Our Ghost Brush Kickstarter is Ghost Brush, looking great, all white nylon. It's going bananas on YouTube, or on the Kickstarter. It is just like over 750 backers or something like that, which means that 750 plus brushes I'm going to donate to the Phoenix Children's Hospital. Also, if you go back down in my videos, there's a Nagash giveaway, the Supreme Lord of the Undead. Nagash, he's like a $100 model, and we made that video. If we hit 1,000 subscribers, we will be giving him away. If we don't, we'll be giving away something else. And that was hopefully to promote my Kickstarter, and that's going very, very good. Thank you so much for the support. Please subscribe. Please subscribe. Talk to you soon.